So hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Simone Cordery-Cotter. I am the Program Manager for Sierra Climate Adaptation and Mitigation Partnership, and we are the organization, we are the program of Sierra Business Council, and we're putting on this three-part learning series. It's a peer energy efficiency learning series. Today we'll be talking about ESCOs, energy service companies, and we're very lucky to be joined by some of our speakers that I'll introduce in just a minute. Just a quick note, for those of you that are attending or watching the recording, please just know that Sierra Business Council also hosts the Sierra Small Business Development Center. You can find their website at sierrasbdc.com. They are currently putting out additional information on business recovery and unemployment for independent contractors and more relevant information for folks in the business community. And if you have questions about how to access some of those resources, we highly recommend that you give them a call. If you are not in one of the counties that is served by the Sierra Small Business Development Center, you can also find your local SBDC, and they should be providing those resources for you as well. I also just want to call attention, Nevada County has a Facebook group, collaborative resources for Nevada County small businesses, and then statewide, if you're a nonprofit organization and having trouble accessing any recovery resources or anything that you might need at the moment, calnonprofits.org is an excellent resource for that sort of thing. So just as a quick overview, this is part 2 of our 3-part learning series. We had resilience, funding, and implementation on April 23rd. Today's May 28th. We're doing ESCO 101, and on June 25th we'll be hosting building community support, which is the final installment, where we'll be exploring best practices on forming community support for energy efficiency ordinances and codes, and how best to communicate energy action plan goals and other elements of community engagement. So if any of those interests, if the June 25th one interests you, you can register for it. We'll be making that registration link available. The April 23rd one was also recorded. So if you are interested in accessing that one, you can either find it on our website or please reach out to us and we should be able to help you access that. So I just want to give everybody a quick overview of what we've got coming up for the session today. We're just doing a quick introduction. We'll do some housekeeping really quickly. So for those of you who are attending, please know that there's a Q&A option. There's a Q&A box. There's also a chat box. If you have questions for our panelists, we will not be pausing during the presentation to answer questions. So I'm going to ask you to drop any questions that you might have in the Q&A box, and we'll address those when we get to the Q&A section of the presentation. So what will be happening is Kari Sinoff, Project Manager for Sierra Business Council, is up first. And then we're lucky enough to be joined by Mike Kempa from ABM Solutions. And then we've got Steve Monaghan from Nevada County as well, who will be talking about Nevada County's projects with ESCOs. And then after those 3 panelists have presented, we'll be doing a question and answer session. So the question and answer session is not recorded. That's why we encourage folks to join us live. So at that point, we'll be addressing any questions that get dropped in the Q&A. Alrighty, so Kari, I will go ahead and stop sharing my screen and I will let you take it away.
I am a project manager for Sierra Business Council's Climate Energy team, and I have worked with Sierra Business Council for about 5 years now. It's been a wonderful experience. And as you know, one of our missions is to help rural communities move towards increased regional environmental resiliency, economic vitality, and social equity. And we do that every day. One of the ways we do this is through our Sierra Nevada Energy Watch program. This program is a local government partnership with PG&E, and it's funded by the California utility ratepayers. We all pay into this, and this is through the PG&E Public Purpose Program. This program allows our team to provide a variety of no-cost energy consulting and project management services to agencies and customers. Some of these, some of these include local government agencies, special districts, school districts, and hard-to-reach and disadvantaged community customers that are underserved, with businesses underserved, small to medium-sized businesses. This new program is designed to further energy reduction goals through planning, analysis, outreach, education, and on-the-ground energy reduction projects. So some of the things we specialize in are greenhouse gas inventories, development of energy and climate action plans. We provide implementation strategy for reducing emissions and coming up with short-term and long-term goals. We facilitate workshops, trainings, peer groups, and EAP working groups. These energy planning services help us provide a clear data-driven path towards energy reduction solutions that we can share with the agencies and customers that we work with. And then what we try to do with that information is help these agencies prioritize project-based solutions that achieve real savings and optimize benefits. Our team supports this path through project management services. This is one of the main services we offer, and we try and drive cost-effective bundled energy solutions. And bundled energy solutions is an approach that encourages customers to take advantage of deeper savings and provide sustained energy reduction. And we do this through a bill-neutral approach that often produces a cash-positive approach. So we'll go to the next slide and see what all that means. Hold on one second. So what we try to do is we try to simplify this process for agencies. It's very complicated when you're trying to take all this data and actually put it into projects. So an important step in this process involves SNUs partnering with PG&E and TradePro professionals and ESCO companies to help us move projects from the planning and development stage through project identification, installation, and to recognize, again, the post-installation benefits of reducing energy costs and building healthy and resilient communities. So we partner with many ESCOs and TradePro providers in our area, and we sorry. I just lost my volume. Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Kari, no problem.
Sorry, my computer flickered out there. So we have a group of ESCOs and trade pros that we work with to help us actually install projects. And both of these different groups of contractors offer different things. So what we're talking about today is some of the differences between what an ESCO can offer, an ESCO organization can offer, versus what a PG&E utility trade pro can offer. And as most of you probably know, an ESCO basically just stands for Energy Services Company. And let's take a look at some of the differences. I went ahead and put together a list that kind of outlines that highlights what each of these have to offer and some of the differences. And if we look at this list, if you guys can read that, I'm not sure, hopefully it's clear enough. Much of what an ESCO and much of how you decide if you're going to work with an ESCO or a trade pro is basically going to depend on what the goals and objectives were as they were identified during the planning phase. and also by how each agency and their board connects with the Trade Pro ESCO. So what we'll do, we'll go through all this, we'll work with the agencies, we will go through an entire planning process, which is all involves meetings. We'll get an idea of what the agency, what kind of projects they're looking for, and then we will work with them to see if an ESCO or a PG&E Trade Pro would be most beneficial. So basically, if we look on the left of the screen here, you can see ESCOs are considered a design build contractor approach. They want to take a holistic approach with these bundled energy reduction solutions. They can provide a variety of approaches. They can install both energy efficiency projects, which is where both of these options are always going to start with energy efficiency ideally. But then the trade pros can also incorporate renewable energies such as wind, solar, hydro options. They can incorporate microgrids. They can incorporate motors, pumps. Basically anything that is going to reduce energy use or reduce water can be bundled into the solutions they offer. So they have these flexible energy solutions. They also work with a variety of funding partners. One of them is the PG&E on-bill financing. They work with independent banks, and they also will try to work with state and federal funding programs when possible. They are going after budget neutral solutions, and they have tend to have a 15 to 20 year payback. It depends on the useful life of the equipment. So that the calculation, the useful life of the equipment, and then the reduction energy savings, that's what will determine the length of the loan. The energy savings have to be able to pay down the loan term and hopefully provide a little positive cash flow in order to move forward with those funding sources. They also guarantee their savings for the life of the project. They also provide 3 years of measurement and verification post-installation. And because these projects, because the ESCO path is really ideally bundling lots of different energy solutions, these tend to be best suited for projects over $1 million because you have to have enough energy savings to pay off the loan in the time period we just discussed. They provide free investment grade energy audits, and they are eligible to utilize the California Code 4217, which Mike's going to talk about in a little bit. Then the PG&E Utility Trade Pro, these programs are funded, as I said earlier, out of the Utility Public Purchase Program. So this program, because it's paid for by customers essentially, it has more restrictions tied to it. This is public money that's being used to fund projects for the benefit of the community. So it is going to have more restrictions because they want to make sure this money is being implemented in a fair way to all customers. So trade pros, what they do is they're going to maximize the PG&E utility program funds and provide a variety of energy efficiency solutions that also prioritize a no capital investment strategy. Primarily, these types of projects are going to be simpler, smaller. They're focused on energy efficiency because that is what is directed from the CPUC for these funds. And they're going in and implementing retrofit measures, which means they are not really touching the infrastructure of the building. They are going in and retrofitting one-for-one, or adding controls, or adding variable frequency drives to equipment, or adding controls. They have a few more restrictions with regard of how much savings they can actually they can actually, that actually counts towards the overall estimated savings. For example, controls, they may exceed 20% of the savings, but they cap that calculation for loan-term repayment at 20% of the savings. So they also target bill neutral solutions, and the main way to take advantage of all these programs is through the 0% PG&E on-bill financing. You know, SBC, we can step in and help you find alternative funding solutions, but working with PG&E in that 0% financing, that's their one major contribution, is you can finance this project 0% through the on-bill financing, which basically uses your estimated monthly savings to pay down the loan. Another restriction with this one is it's that the loan term cannot exceed 10 years for local government agencies or 5 years for businesses. So again, it's going to limit the kind of projects you can do. You're not going to get windows to calculate out in 10, replacing windows to calculate out in that time frame. So it's really geared towards lighting, HVACs, and other things like that. These proposals are evaluated by a third-party quality assurance engineer. So they really, they very accurately estimate these savings. They do it pre-install, they do it again post-install to make sure everything is going to calculate accurately so you don't have any surprises. We want these projects to come in bill neutral. They also have a mandatory operation maintenance training and check-in pre-installation and annually post-installation, and they also have an annual measurement and verification reporting annually as well, as do the ESCOs. So these projects are best suited for smaller projects with a minimum, it has to be a minimum of $5,000 project, up to $250,000 per site for government agencies, and then up to $4 million per customer for government agencies. But it's fairly easy to request an exception if the project is going to show deep savings and you want to invest, you want to apply for higher than $4 million per customer. Offer free ASHRAE level 1, I spelled that wrong, ASHRAE level 1 audits, energy efficient retrofit. And again, this one can utilize it for contract code, which Mike is going to be talking about. So those are kind of pros and cons. It's a lot of information I just threw on you. I think it's important to understand. Mike is going to, I'll just briefly introduce the advantages of the California Public Resources Contract Code 4217. Basically, this allows public agencies to bypass the RFQ, RFA process, and they can just work with an ESCO or a P&E trade pro that best suits their project and can more easily help them avoid all the costs associated with putting out an RFP and everything that goes along with that. The idea of this was to just push these projects through and get local government agencies, public agencies starting to push projects through and save energy and save money. So let's see what this is. Oh, sorry guys. So where does SBC fit into all this? So what we do is we support the energy reduction processes in the long term and short term. We help local government agencies increase access to utility funds and reduce operational costs to save money and decrease emissions, fostering healthy lives. We utilize our vast networking and institutional relationships with community-based organizations, advocacy groups, industry professionals, and promote program awareness and resilient. Yeah.
Sorry, just real quick. Can you advance to one more slide? We're still on the 4217, and you're just covering so much super valuable info. I want to make sure we've got it on the screen too. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. I'm so sorry.
No, don't apologize. It looks great.
So we're promoting, we're always promoting program awareness. We're always promoting resiliency-driven energy solutions that benefit not just the agency, not just the individual, but the entire community, businesses, residents, government agencies. We track California state policy, CPUC regulations, funding opportunities, utility rebates and incentives. We provide additional energy planning services, data analysis as necessary to support the agency decision-making process. We provide, as I mentioned several times, our great no-cost project management services throughout all phases of the planning and development. We also provide preliminary on-site audits to help help us inform the agency maybe which direction to go. Are we looking at it at ESCO? We're looking at a lot of solutions, higher dollar amount, or are we going to just go in and all you have left to do is some lighting or the basic energy efficiency projects to get you guys saving money now type of deal. So that's what we can do on our preliminary on-site audits, and then move that development right along. And then we're going to help the agencies connect with a trade pro or ESCO, and then continue to support that process all the way through the actual installation, funding, post follow-up, and then move on again to whatever next energy reduction process follows that. We want to start a habit of always doing one project after the other in a bill neutral way, with having to invest as little capital as possible, yet saving as much money as you can to be a leader in your community and set examples and create a resilient atmosphere for everybody.
Awesome.
And I think that was a lot of information, and we're going to get a great follow-up and even more detail with Mike. So thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Kari. That was incredibly informative. That comparison of the ESCO and the trade pros is really super helpful. And I hope that we can make that slide available to folks after the presentation. So thank you so much. Alrighty. Mike, I want to go ahead and invite you to share your screen.
So anyway, thank you again very much for allowing us to do this. And what we want to talk about is what is an ESCO and what's the process? Why do you use one? What's involved? The pros and cons. So, and it does all revolve around 4217, what we in the business we call California 4217. But we'll get into a little deeper of what that is. So if we look at the agenda, I will cover the code a little bit up front, the history of it. What is again, energy service company, an ESCO? What's the process? If you decide to finally use one, what's the process? And it's pretty formalized on how to use ESCOs in the state. What's the guaranteed savings model look like? And a question that we get asked 9 out of 10 times, how do you guys get paid? We always get that question for those who've never used an ESCO. It's a relatively simple answer, but I'll go through that. And then I'll just cover something specifically in the legislation that allows any public entity in the state of California to either directly engage or do what we'll call an RFQ process if they have a need to do that, if they have a local desire, and that's okay because the code allows you to do that. So I'll move on. Let's talk about the history. So first of all, this has been around for a long time, since literally 1991. And I will tell you, I was back in the Midwest when it really started in Ohio around 1984, 1985. And what started was the ability for public schools to have an alternative method of fixing their buildings without having to use capital dollars or without having to do bid spec for every little thing they wanted to do. And I can't remember what the Senate bill was back in 1984, 85. It's been too long for me. But that's where it started. And then every state began to see the true benefits of what we know as a guaranteed energy savings project procurement. And it just grew. It just grew like wildfire. And now every state has one. Some of the states have different rules and processes, and some states are more involved than others. State, like Colorado, their energy office is extremely involved, where California State Energy Office is not. And that's okay, not all of them are. But it's been around for a long time. And you can see this is right out of the Public Resources Code. I'm not going to read this for everybody, but in essence, feasible means of saving energy and water and using alternative energy and water supply sources. Then they developed California 4217 to help implement the policy set forth in 25008. They created this legislation for local governments, public agencies. So that's cities, towns, K through higher ed, as long as it's a public higher ed, water agencies, public water districts, wastewater districts. If you're a public entity in the state, you can use this procurement method. And in accordance with this chapter, utilizing energy service companies. So it's there, hundreds, and you'll see some data here, of customers, if not thousands in California, have used this already since 1991. Many schools, and even some cities, mostly schools because of some of them are so large, have done multiple phases already since that. Here's an interesting, because sometimes we will be asked, how long has this been around, and how many people have done this and that. These are some really good, and I believe that this is about a 2-year-old report now, because I think I built this about 1.5 years ago. So, but as of 2 years ago, more than, it's saved since 1990, more than 450 million tons of CO2. It's created over 450,000 person years of direct employment. And most ESCOs, I'll never be able to speak for all, but most really do try to use local contractors to do a lot of the work and creating new jobs. That's a big deal for these projects. By 2 years ago, there was almost $55 billion in guaranteed and verified savings in these projects. And that created about $50 billion in projects paid from those savings. So we're not talking about something that just started, that's new, that is not tested. This has got some great history and some big savings associated with it. And again, public K through higher ed, cities, counties, water agencies, as long as you're a public entity in the state, you can do this. I'm gonna just take a second. Bruce, do you want to add anything at this point?
Sure. Yeah, one of the things that's really clear is that the ability for this type of procurement to be done in California has really led to a tremendous amount of overall carbon reduction, energy savings, and financial solutions that are very viable for public agencies that are typically strapped for funds for doing any upfront development, engineering, etc., to prepare a project. So the value of this approach is that at a very low risk, a public agency can actually go ahead and plan for a very impactful program that can produce a tremendous amount of energy savings and monetary savings with very little upfront funding.
Okay, thanks, Bruce. We'll move on. What is an ESCO? Well, first of all, if you're an ESCO, chances are you belong to the National Association of Energy Service Companies, which is a great site to go to see who the ESCOs are. There's also great tips there. There's RFQs there if necessary. There's all kinds of information at the ESCO site. And most of us in the business are a member of that and provide information to them to help customers. It's kind of like a good place to go to. If you don't know anything about ESCOs, it's a good site to go to learn about that. And again, what does it mean? Energy service company. And there are some basic requirements to be an ESCO. You got to be experienced and effective and have a delivery mechanism. Again, we are not a consulting firm. We don't do audits for a living and then, you know, provide you with a 6-inch binder or a big, you know, amount of information. Again, going back to what Kari said, we are, you know, a design build contractor who just so happens to guarantee the performance of what we're doing and the savings. So you do have to have an effective delivery mechanism, project management, design to fulfill the project itself and then measure it. Guarantee terms range between 10 and 20 years. And again, I think Kari mentioned this too. It really has to do with the life cycle of the solutions that were in your bundle. So if you're doing some really short, maybe some simple lighting, and then you've got some boilers, chillers, maybe you're doing a roof, you got to look at all the life cycle of all of those. And then whatever that is, and they're typically between 10 and 20 years when you put them all together. That's typically the guarantee term, because the guarantee term aligns with the financing term. Years of extensive design and implementation have to be there. You got to provide a maximum amount of energy and operational facility. So when we look at a public entity, we're looking at everything on the list that whether or not it's a city or a school needs to get done, everything, and besides the energy. What are the capital improvements they haven't been able to fund? So we're looking for all kinds of, there's also operational savings that are allowed in the state, maintenance savings. You go from an old mechanical piece of equipment that's costing you an arm and a leg for maintenance, and we're going to upgrade the new technology, and then the maintenance cost is going to go down. Those are valuable savings to gather and add to the bundle. And there it is. So it allows, the real key to doing an ESCO project is it allows you to bundle multiple efficiency measures and infrastructure improvements to leverage an overall project payback. You don't look at these as, well, the lighting has a 7-year, 10-year, and the boiler has 20. You look at it as, if I get all of this done, my overall payback is, just throw something out there, 15 to 20 years. You have an extremely viable project to do under 4217. Oh, sorry, wrong one. There we go. ESCOs integrate the entire design. We help provide the financing. Typically, we don't provide the financing. We all have partners. We all have the Bank of Americas. We all have the Prime Capitals. We all have the Holman Capitals, the Wells Fargos, who love doing, or I should say, love funding and financing these projects because they've done so many of them. They know them. And for them, they're less risky than some of the other things because you've got a big company like ABM and other large ESCOs who are backing it with a guarantee. So we have to provide not only the design, the financing, I'd say kind of like a concierge service of financing, because we'll help with that, project management and installation. It really is a turnkey, again, going back to design build. It's a turnkey project where you don't really, the customer really doesn't have to do much to get this all done. And of course, you have to provide a financial guarantee. The savings generated must cover the entire cost of the debt service program. I have an example later of a cash flow, so I can show you how that works. Measurement and verification of savings can and is almost always provided. You can call those annual audits of the savings. We, again, and I say we, I'm talking about ESCOs, typically call those measurement and verification reviews, where we go through and make sure that the savings that are in the contract and the methods of how we were measuring those are actually the savings that you are getting. The overall benefits of this program? Well, first of all, the savings are going to be guaranteed. And it's a real guarantee that, this ESCOs do what they say they're going to do, they have to do a couple things. They either have to write a check to make you whole, or they have to do more work, but it's a financial guarantee on those savings. Again, what's the key to this? It's going to reduce utility, both energy, water, propane. Just think of all the different utilities besides just electricity, maintenance and operational expenses. You're going to free up the capital budget dollars to fund other investments. If there are things in the capital budget that we can get done, we as an ESCO, and move it into a 4217, those what we freed up that was on your capital budget can now be used for something else besides a new roof or a new boiler or whatever. Use it for something else. It really helps replace aging deferred maintenance infrastructure with new. And because there is the ability to finance this over such a long term, and we're talking again, 15, 18 years, it allows you to get into, I believe the Lawrence Berkeley Labs their term is deep retrofits. It allows you to get some of those things done that cost a lot of money, but they have a long payback. But you got to get it done somewhere. You got to provide heater, cooling, or whatever it is to the school or to the city hall. So it allows you to get some of those items in the bundle and accomplished. Vendor neutrality. Even the ones who there's some ESCOs out there who make things. They make control systems or whatever. For the most part, we all try to look at this as vendor. We're very vendor neutral because we don't make any of this stuff. But that's key, because the other advantage of doing this is those in the facilities have the choice of what manufacturer they want to use. If for whatever reason they want to use a Train chiller versus a Carrier, they want to use a Siemens control system versus a Honeywell, the customer has the choice of what to use, because in a lot of times they want to have that uniform throughout the entire school system or the city or the water district, whatever it is. So these programs are always generated with vendor neutrality. Always provide up-to-date training and knowledge. Now you're going to get all new equipment. Some's going to be really new technology because some of it's very old. Training is always provided so that the staff who takes it over will be able to maintain it, or at least manage it. Maybe it's just a matter of no more maintaining something that's so automatic, but it's using and looking at it on their iPhone or their iPad and make sure the buildings are operating safely. And they're reliable and persistent long-term savings and project performance. I mean, that's really, the big deal. That's why these programs were created in the first place. Use these persistent, reliable long-term savings to fund projects that you typically can't do because you don't have the capital funds. And it really does enhance local economies because, again, local subcontractors. Turnkey design, build project, and one point of contact and responsibility. And again, Bruce, you want to add anything to this one?
Yeah, I think the main thing is that there would be pretty much a savings on the overall operation and implementation of the program, since you don't have to have the agency managing multiple different contractors, multiple different contracts, and all the legal and all the other soft costs of really trying to do a massive project across maybe 4 or 5 different trades. So I think it's just a overall economy of scale, plus the ability to leverage the avoided costs to get the financing, which is really just creating ability to do capital projects that have been unfunded for years.
Yep. And I will say this too, that I know from our perspective, our team, though we have the engineers and the project managers to do all of that, our account execs are really good about really getting into your budgets, your capital and operating budgets, and looking for items, infrastructure needs, and see if we can get them in the bundle. That's part of the feasibility study that most ESCOs do right off the bat at no cost. Okay. Here's the process in the state of California for 4217. First of all, you got to determine a need to utilize one, and that's where you guys come in, right, Kari? This is where you could help do that. You could actually ask an ESCO to do that for you by doing again, I don't ever like using the word free, because every ESCO, it does cost us to put an engineer on site, but we don't charge that to the customer to see if it's feasible. Just one thing, Kari, on yours, it said that the ESCOs do free IGA audits. That's not exactly right. That IGA audit comes down here in the design. We will do an similar on the PGE side up here, an ASHRAE 1, just to see if it's feasible to do. We'll do that at no cost. But to do a full-blown, what's known as an IGA audit, is hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I'm not sure most people even need that, to spend that money for that, because it all happens in the design, scope of work, and calculations, and contract document. If you're really interested in doing a project, this is the process you follow. If you're interested in getting an IGA audit by itself, again, I always say the 6-inch ring binder, then you can hire, there's plenty of consultants who will do that, and then you just get the binder. And then if you want to do an ESCO project, you could do it after that. But typically the ESCOs will help determine the need to utilize. Is it worth it? Is there enough in your budget? Is there enough energy, water, maintenance, capital projects? Is there enough to look at that it would actually be feasible to do it? Then you have a choice. And I will show you in the next slide or so why you have a choice of either doing direct engagement. And I will tell you, sole source is not the correct term in this state. You might hear somebody say you can sole source. Sole source is a federal procurement term. That's not, it's direct engagement. You're not sole sourcing. I know that sounds like the same thing, but it's not. But you can, according to the legislation, directly engage with an ESCO, or you can do a competitive RFQ. It's not an RFP because you can't do pricing, because we have none of the ESCOs would know what to do at that point. You're just picking an ESCO like you would a design build contract. And then you award the ESCO, typically with a letter of intent. That's normal in the business. Then they begin the full design, subcontractor, equipment selection, savings calculations, contract management, development, putting the actual contract development, helping you getting the financing ready, measurement and verification. How are we going to measure this? How are we going to verify it? How are we going to guarantee it? This is where all the work happens in this design scope of work, the meat of the work. But at that point, you've already chosen an ESCO. You've gone through the process. So if you want to say, well, if somebody on the board says, well, how did we pick them? Well, we either directly engaged because the law says we could, or we did a simple RFQ and we picked this company because they had the best experience and so forth and so on. And then once that's done, you implement the ESCO, and I should put here, really the financing. If you're financing it, it's signed. Project management begins, project commissioning, staff training, and then after that, the guarantee period begins. So it's really a relatively simple process, and it all starts at, is it worth doing? Is it feasible? Do you have enough of infrastructure needs and operating costs that it's worth doing an ESCO project versus a PG&E project, which is what Kari was speaking about. Anything on this one, Bruce, before I go any farther, because we're almost done?
Nope, I think we're good.
Okay. When we talk about funding and savings, this is typically how they're done. Now, I will tell you, there's nothing in the legislation, nothing at all, for 4217 that says it has to be financed. Many school districts used Prop 39 funds to do a 4217 because they got the Prop 39 money. They didn't have to finance anything, but they used the ESCO to guarantee the savings or to do more on top of the Prop 39 with additional savings and additional projects. But typically they are financed because you don't have the capital. That's why a lot of people do this. And this is the structure. You have the ESCO. The ESCO is guaranteeing savings, which go back to the public entity. And then the public entity makes the fixed principal and interest payment to a lender, financier. I mentioned a few before, Wells Fargo, Bank of America. And then the ESCOs get paid from the escrow of the financing. So it's as simple as that. Here's a good example. Let's say we found $4 billion worth of work to do at this public entity. Let's say it included boilers, chillers, lighting, temperature controls, maybe because we're going to put new rooftops on and the roof is bad, we're going to put a new roof on, whatever it is. Or we're going to, you know, we've had some where we've actually included a security system. There's all kinds of things that we've been able to do for public entities because there was enough savings to do it. Good example, because Bruce has a lot of experience in solar PV and the carports, is let's say you got a really bad parking lot for your school is a good example, really bad safety issue. But solar PV carports are the right thing to do there. Well, then if you're going to be taking up the ground anyway to build all these carports, that's the time to include the parking lot repaving in that. And as long as there's savings, you can do that. You could do that. For years, when lighting was done in schools, putting new lighting in, you can imagine some of the schools, you know, that had 30, 40-year-old drop ceilings, and they looked terrible. They were yellow, they were dirty, some were missing tiles. Well, we put new roof, or actually not roofs, but put new ceilings in those classrooms with the new lighting fixtures. Now those classrooms instantly are brighter, a better learning environment. So in this case, whatever that $4 million project is, let's assume that we have, if you can see this, a total annual savings of $333,000 for the first year, and then we calculate what the savings will be for the next 15 years based on rate increases, because rate increases are going to happen, and we have all that information. So in this case, that $4 million project self-funds out of the savings, because the annual P&I for this $4 million is about $326,000. And again, I'm showing you what the rates currently are, but I'm not a financial company, so don't hold me to this, please. About 2.7%. So in essence, $4 million worth of work, whatever that is, can be funded with no capital outlay. And Kari, I think you mentioned this before, with a little bit of annual cash flow, as you can see to the far right. First year, there's about 40, then there's 10. So, and the financing companies will all do this. If you have some grant money or rebates, or you've got something going on where maybe there's not maintenance savings at a certain year, they will literally make the payments match the savings year to year to year to year, so that you will never have to come up with extra money in that year. So that's a cash flow example. And this is just a real simple picture of what happens. You have your actual cost before you begin. The project starts. You're still going to have some reoccurring costs. I mean, we're not taking your operational costs down to zero. We're not going to, on energy, water, gas, and maintenance and everything else to zero. But whatever that amount is you use for the investment into the ESCO, always have maybe a little bit over that. And then when it's ending, whether or not this is 10, 15, or 18, or we just did one for 20 years for a big school district, a 20-year contract with 20-year financing. And after that, all the savings are the entities. So it's just a good, I think, visual graphic of how these ESCO projects actually work. All right, how do we get paid? It's pretty simple. Turnkey design build program. We do the project administration, the design, engineering. All subcontractors come through us. Again, most of the time, we will always ask, the customers if there's any subcontractors they don't want us to use or do want us to use. Equipment commissioning, staff training and documents, and an M&V. We're literally doing everything for the project because we're held accountable for the guarantee. So as we end this up here, I wanted to bring up, California Government Code goes all the way to, I think, 18. So, but there's two sections, 12 and 16, that I wanted to really highlight. In 12, you'll see that there's prior to awarding or entering into agreement or lease, the public agency may request proposals. I would say 9 out of 10 local attorneys for the public agency would probably lean towards the conservative and say, let's at least do a simple RFQ. Let's, do the, unfortunately someone called like a beauty contest or whatever. But the reality is at least they're doing some type of procurement process to say we chose, the best qualified ESCO we could find based on their references, what they did, their staff, experience, so forth and so on. And the other one of this is that prior to moving into a contract, just like anything else that happens with a purchase, there has to be that notice of public hearing given at least 2 weeks in advance. I bring those two up because that is the legislation. Those two things have to happen. You can make a choice and get your legal opinion. Do we want to do an RFQ, or do we want to directly engage? Because the key word is may, not must or have to, but may. So I want to make sure everybody knows that. Anything else on this, Bruce, you want to add?
Yeah, I think it's a good wrap there. Thanks, Mike.
Okay. So, again, I know we're doing this later, but there we go. That's where you can reach. Sorry, Bruce, I didn't put your phone number on there. I forgot to do that last night, but you have our email addresses, and you got my phone number if you have any questions.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mike and Bruce. That was incredibly thorough. I can't thank you guys enough for spending the time with us today. And Bruce, if you're comfortable with it as well, we can share out your email and your phone number, Mike, your info as well after in our wrap-up email, just so that everybody who was registered for the webinar has that along with the recording.
Thank you again very much.
My name's Steve Monaghan. I am the agency director for the County of Nevada over the Information and General Services Agency. And inside that agency lives our facilities management group that takes care of all of our county infrastructure, buildings, and whatnot. So starting back in 2008, I think was our first county energy plan that we developed. And that kind of laid out the goals of what we wanted to do as we started tackling energy projects. I have one example that I'll go through. We've used ESCOs as a good strategy in that. I think in the last 15 years, we've used the ESCO model 3 times on 3 different projects. And this latest project that we did in 2016 through 18 was our biggest project, and that's what I'm going to go over today. So we had these goals about modernizing facilities, doing energy. We worked with Sierra Business Council, I don't know, 10 years ago or so, probably back in the 08 era, on a greenhouse gas emissions inventory. And that's when AB 32 came out from the state with voluntary guidelines on how to reduce your greenhouse gas emissions. So we had some targets on that, and we started working towards this. So in 2016, we were looking at a number of projects that we wanted to do. We had a lot of deferred maintenance, like what Mike had talked about wanting to do. And so we started looking at how to bundle this project back together. The total project was about a $13 million project, and there's a slide at the end on the finance stuff I'll go over, so I won't go over it here. But we were looking at our annual electric bill of over $1 million and how we could reduce that and meet some of those other goals in our energy plan. So we put together this project. Next slide. So we were looking at building automations, our automatic systems that control HVAC, door systems, all the electronics in the buildings, some lighting upgrades. Over the years, we have done most of the internal inside lights, but we still had quite a few parking lot outdoor lights that had not been upgraded to LED technology yet. County has about 40 facilities, and we had gone through one of our previous ESCO projects and replaced a lot of HVAC, but we still had about half the buildings that had their HVAC at the 20 to 30 year age range, and they were all, in dire need of being replaced. We had one, about a 25,000 square foot facility that needed a complete new roof replacement on it, and then we wanted to do some solar generation. So We did the request for qualifications back in 2014. We had 16 firms respond to that. Very similar to what public agencies do. You know, Mike was talking about design build, or what we do for when you pick an architect firm. You know, you bring them in, you have them talk about past projects, what are their qualifications, what are their teams. You know, one of the things that we always get, this is a design build. We have no ESCOs that operate and reside within Nevada County. So our Contractors Association is always really sensitive to us not hiring local firms. So we always, you can't require it, but we always ask the question, how are you going to leverage local firms so that some of that work happens inside our county? And we've always had good work, good luck with the ESCOs in that most of the electrical work, the sheet metal work, and some of the other work, they'll contract out to local firms. It's kind of a win-win. And, you know, about 30% of the project gets to stay local that way. And then, you know, what was spoken before, ESCOs are really attractive because it is a complete design build. They identify opportunities for energy savings, things that we may not have even thought about, and put together a portfolio of projects. And then we can say, yeah, we want to do that one. No, we don't want to do that piece. So next slide, please. So we did a majority of this last project out of the almost $13 million budget. About 9 million of it was solar generation. So we did a lot of the shade structures at our main county building. And that's kind of a win-win in that employees and the publics, when they park at our facilities, they're out of the sun. And the structure of our roof would accommodate solar in these facilities as well. So it worked out real well. Next slide. So we did a total of 5 sites. So we did 3 buildings, and then we did 2 solar farms. We did 1 solar farm on a wastewater treatment plant down in Lake of the Pines area off Highway 20 down South County, we call it. And that pretty much is kind of a standalone system that provides probably 97% of the electricity for that wastewater treatment plant. And as we looked at our energy utilization, our 2 big wastewater treatment plants were like our top 2 users. And then it would go to our jail, our juvenile hall, that are 24/7, 365 facilities. So we made sure that all of those facilities had solar generation. So one of the solar farms that's kind of creative, and government started getting into this, is where you can have this farm, and through this local government renewable energy self-generation bill credit transfer program, that's long, but the RESBCT, you can have that consolidated solar farm, and we have one there that generates just over 2 megawatts of energy, and have that feed up to 50 meters on different facilities across the county, as long as they're all on PG&E for us, because this was a PG&E program, and we're feeding that power back into PGE, so we have to use that on our PGE fed sites. So when we looked at a lot of our facilities, we have Carnegie libraries, we have like the Veterans Memorial Building in downtown Grass Valley, 1920 is when it started being constructed. We have a lot of historic buildings, or buildings where the footprint wouldn't accommodate solar or ground solar. Our Lake Wildwood wastewater treatment plant is in a very small footprint. Does not have the land or the sun to accommodate solar. So we were able to really, virtually put solar on all these facilities by doing it at this one farm location. And this was a lot. It's right off Highway 49 past the main government center on the way up to North San Juan. We bought it in 2009, 10 acres for $300,000. Just the solar alone on that site is generating almost $400,000 a year in offset to our PG&E bills. So really great investment. And it was a real flat, treeless lot. So it worked out really well for us. Next slide. So looking at our total solar generation and our energy, it's almost 5 megawatts worth of offset. And then I won't read through these, but you can see what the environmental effects are, which really helps us with our greenhouse gas reduction goals. Next slide. So this is just kind of a recap. So our annual lease and system maintenance, and that pays for our ESCO Climatech partnered with SunPower, who did the solar generation component of the project. So together, you can see that's less than our $1 million a year electric bill. So it is in a positive state, which is really great. Our 20-year net savings is around $8 million. And then 21-year, and then on year 21, we'll be saving $1.3 million a year, and there, hopefully that farm and that solar has at least a 30-year life on it, if not more. And then total life cycle savings at 21 years is $24 million. And what that is that's the combination between that 20-year net savings of $8.4 million, and then it's paying off the capital, because we had to issue bonds to finance this project. That gets completely paid off in 20 years. So not only did we save $8.4 million, we now have, $14 million worth of capital asset paid for as well. The other thing that was available to us when we did this financing was there was a federal program through the IRS for solar generation that offset some of that finance costs. So while interest rates were around 2.7%, 2.8%, we got like a 2% offset from the IRS through this program. So we're effectively paying about a 0.8% finance cost, which is just fantastic. And that's about it for me.
Steve, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. And we really appreciate you guys being here and kind of talking us through that. I don't know, I haven't seen any questions pop up in the Q&A, and we've got a couple attendees on the line. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A. Other than that, otherwise, I have a couple questions that I was hoping I could put to all of our panelists if they're still on the line and available. I was curious to know, Mike and Bruce, this question is for you, and potentially Kari Sinoff as well. If there is one centralized place to find available ESCOs similar to a directory, I think I thought of it because Steve mentioned that Nevada County doesn't have any ESCOs in the county, but if there is somewhere where local governments or special districts can go looking for either an ESCO within their county or an ESCO that serves their county, is there one spot where folks can go?
Unfortunately, I don't know if you can go to a spot to find if there's one in your county, but and because most ESCOs have branch offices everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
but the best thing to do is go to the ESCO site that was on my presentation there and look at the list of ESCOs that are on that site. Most of them are there. Most of them are part of that. And then you can always look up that ESCO on their website and see where their offices are.
Okay.
Right?
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Well, and I'll give you
that.
an example. Most of us, we have 4 or 5 branch offices in the state of California. ABM does. It may not be exactly in the county. It might be in the county next to it. But considering we all use, and I think we both mentioned this, local contractors anyway. doing the actual work. They're driving. They're the labor force. We're the engineering, project development, project management, and then the guaranteer. But the work is really being done locally.
Excellent. Thank you, Mike. That's very helpful. I had a quick question that we got in the question and answer box was how large kilowatt hour savings / dollar amounts do projects need to be to work with an ESCO? And I believe, Kari, you covered that on your slide. Would you mind giving us that range again?
So your question was what size of project is best suited for an ESCO?
Correct.
So ultimately, it's going to depend on the potential savings that they find on site, multiple sites, because you have to have enough savings available to reduce those savings to pay off the project. So generally, from a couple different sources, in one of those, including Mike, is, generally they're looking for $1 million project.
All righty. I'm not seeing any additional questions, so I'm going to go ahead and take the opportunity to say thank you. Thank you so much to all of our panelists. We really, really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Thank you to Kari and Mike and Bruce and Steve for making the time to chat. Thank you, Justine, for being my technological backup today. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to go ahead and let everybody know that we'll be ending the webinar, and I hope I get to see some of you relatively soon and work with you a little more closely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Enjoyed it.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye now.